evening and welcome to Meticulous Moments. My name is Juanita Kapp. You can reach me at meticulousmacarons@gmail.com or find me on LinkedIn. Since the COVID-19 pandemic hit the globe, I've had the wonderful privilege to meet a wide array of fantastic individuals. These individuals have truly touched my life in so many positive ways. Amongst this group of people, there are authors, public speakers, life coaches, poets, leaders, and visionaries. They are the unsung heroes of our time. Therefore, I decided to start the Meticulous Moments movement out of a sense of my gratitude. It is my way of giving back to the community. Let us share and reshare their stories in an effort to build a better society. This evening, we welcome to Meticulous Moments the amazing Jarrod H Smith. Founder Jarrod H Smith, call sign Heck Yeah, guides armed forces families to thrive in full readiness, empowering and challenging them to take control of the present while successfully planning for the future. We believe in autonomy, liberty, and total freedom. The military family deserves opportunity to enjoy everything they sacrifice for and defend to the full right now. Our purpose is to inform and prompt early, intentional, informed planning for that inevitable last day in uniformed service. Take control now, plan for the unexpected, and lead your family to thrive throughout military service and far beyond. We offer solutions to government-run transition program traps, providing a personalized service, giving the military family and their hero the advantage. Focus is on the military family, which includes the service member and the military veteran, period. We are not checking boxes, ensuring avoidance of the benefit traps that exist, guiding safely through family life in uniformed service from day one until the very end, whenever that may be. And if already a veteran, ensure you are not missing out. Read more about this on jarrodhsmith.com. Welcome, Jarrod. Good day, everyone, and welcome on Meticulous Moments. Today we are having some time with the wonderful, amazing Jarrod H Smith. Welcome, Jarrod.
Thank you so much. It's great to be here.
Thank you very much. Would you please just introduce yourself to the audience?
Sure. Married, father of four, living near Houston. I grew up in Texas, joined the Navy back in 2002, and have spent about 20 years doing the Navy thing, traveling the world, working in supply chain and logistics with submarine force, naval aviation in the United States. And yeah, we're getting ready to transition back into society and see what the remainder of the last half of my life offers.
That's wonderful. That's fantastic. And it fits in so well with what we do here at Meticulous Moments, because our heart is to facilitate community upliftment through leadership development. And that is why it's such an honor to have you here today to discuss the topic of leadership.
Glad to do it. I've got a lot to say about it too.
That's wonderful. I'm glad to hear that, Jarrod. Jarrod, if you had to render a general description of what leadership is, what would it be?
Most generally, from my perspective, leadership is doing the right thing, especially when it's hard, and most especially when few others are willing or able to make the right decision and then act on it.
Absolutely true. I couldn't agree with you more. That is true leadership in essence. That is why we lead, is because we want to do the right thing. And when we decide to do the right thing ourselves, automatically that spills over to the people that we lead. Fantastic. Thank you so much for that answer. So that leads to my next question, which is, How does self-leadership tie in with our leadership roles in the corporate sense?
Again, tying it back to that broad, most basic understanding of leadership, in the corporate world, yes, the task is to maximize profits, right?
Yeah.
However, I believe there's a red line in the sand, right, between doing the right thing versus doing what's right for the company, right,
Yes.
and or the people that are in it. So we've really got to walk this fine line of ensuring the company is profitable, yet doing the right thing, not only for the company, but the people in it, the customer, and then by extension, the community and or the world. So yeah, there's some real challenges in the leadership realm in the corporate environment. But I believe if we can take it back to its roots of, is this the right thing to do? Then it becomes much, much easier on where to lead and who to lead. So
I agree with you. Now, you will know that in the corporate world, we get trained on leadership of self, leadership of others, leadership of the corporation, leadership of stakeholders. So if we look at those four themes, we realize there's so many entities and people involved.
there are.
That it's so important that when we start with self, we kind of learn how to, in our leadership, mediate, and I want to say juggle all these balls to make sure that everybody has a positive outcome.
Yes. Everybody should win. That's exactly right.
I love that. Everybody should win. I'm going to remember that. Thank you so much for that, Jarrod.
Sure.
Tell me, what was the hardest decision that you've ever had to make as a leader? Have you ever found yourself between a rock and a hard place if you had to make a decision?
Yeah, it was 2 years ago, right around the time that I started my efforts with the book and the military family service solution that I've come up with, and it resulted around what's the right thing to do, right? Because in our military service branches, we talk about taking care of our people, and I realized that we are not, we have not. It has been all about the organization and the institution. And through that, we have failed our people miserably. So for me, that was a hard decision of pivoting my time and attention fully away from being all in on that mission to stepping out and taking a broader perspective and going all in on the what I call the big M mission, right? Of life fully alive in service and in preparation for far beyond. Because for me, that's what true armed forces family readiness is, because of the dangerous profession that many of us are in and experience, because we very well may not come home. And we should be ready for that. And the fact of the matter is, the institution does not have us prepared at all.
Yeah. And I'm thinking as you're speaking that, it took a lot of courage on your part to step out of that and to take that broader perspective, as you've mentioned. It must have been something extremely daunting. And that's why I agree it must have been a very hard decision for you, because to change your frame of mind and to see things in a different light, that takes courage.
It does take courage, but it wasn't hard to do. Why wasn't it hard to do it? Because it was the right thing to do.
Fantastic.
You see,
I love that.
Yeah, it was simply the right thing to do. It is the right thing to do. Because it is still hard, right? My paradigm has changed completely. I mean, I would argue 180-degree change. But I am simply in an environment and a culture that just doesn't see it, because we are conditioned this way from the earliest days in service to think in that way that I thought up until the March timeframe of 2020. and overcoming that and admitting that you might be wrong is really, really hard to do. It's really hard. Nobody enjoys admitting that they had been duped or that they were wrong or that they hadn't seen something that was blatantly obvious. Right.
Yeah.
So that's really hard. It's really hard.
Wow. I'm thinking as you know, as we're conversing, the phrase heart-centered leadership is coming up. And I really feel that you're a very heart-centered leader, because what you are doing and promoting and facilitating through your movement is not only for your benefit, but it's for the greater benefit of those who serve with you and who served with you.
Said every entrepreneur who ever existed, right? Like the entrepreneurs that changed the world didn't do so for their own benefit exclusively. Right. Sure, there's benefit in all action we take because humans, that's the way humans operate. They do things that benefit them, whether or not it's morally or financially or anywhere in between. Yeah. But yeah, it's when you go down paths such as that you and I have taken, it fills you up instead of drains the life out of you. So you know it's the right thing to do. You know the world needs it, and you press forward, right, in order to get that message into the world, in hopes that somebody will see it and then act upon it, because that's what we're driving toward is action and much different outcomes.
Yeah, I believe so, and I agree with you. It does fill us up rather than drain us, because it's that passion that we have in our hearts for others. Absolutely. I couldn't agree with you more. Awesome. Yep. So Jarrod, you are the author of a book with the following title: Avoiding Each and Every Military Veteran's Disadvantage. How to Overcome the Lies in Military Family Beliefs to Get Our Freedom Back. I love that. Please tell us more about the gist of your novel. I love your title. It captivates me.
Yeah. So again, referring back to that March of 2020 timeframe, I asked myself a simple question, and I joked that the MBA I received 8 years ago is that the one thing I stepped away from the MBA with was the fact that words we choose to use, they matter. And then in the Master of Science program I was in the spring of 2020, the spring and fall, or the spring of 2020, early summer 2020, I left that institution knowing that the questions we ask matter. And I put those two things together and decided the questions we ask with the words carefully chosen matters most. Out of that idea came this question: are we doing transition right? 5 words, pretty simple, but an extremely important question around this topic of so-called military transition. Now, with respect to the title, I recognized through the summer and fall of that year that I had believed many lies throughout the course of my armed forces service journey over the last, 17, 18 years at the time, I guess.
Yeah.
And I decided that there was already a book that was The Military Veteran's Advantage. And there's all this noise out here in the world about how advantageous it is to, have been in the military. So I decided to come at it from the opposite direction. Right. And a title like the Military Veteran's Disadvantage, which is actually the title that I started with, was just the Military Veteran's Disadvantage. I got some feedback that it was too brash. It was too radical. Right. And a mentor of mine said, "Hey, Jarrod, what about this? What about avoid? Like you sidestep them, or you don't
engage,
don't embrace disadvantages." Right. Yeah. So I was like, yeah, that should work. A little bit longer title than I wanted, but sure, avoiding each and every military veteran's disadvantage. Right. And I go through a list of 10 disadvantages that I perceive myself to have had up until late 2020, early 2021, because I simply didn't know or didn't understand these different aspects of life. And, I was going on 40 years old at the time. And that was a hard pill to swallow. The fact that my family hadn't instilled a lot of these things in me, that the military organization did not, and that my leaders and peers had not mentioned it. And what I realized was none of them know either.
Yeah. Wow.
Right.
That's crazy.
So the book isn't only for armed forces, families, service members and spouses. It is for the population. It is for middle class America and middle class world, right? And then lower class world also, because it's a lot of the things that the so-called elites, which I call deletes, already know, who are sucking the time right out of our lives because we are not aware of this stuff, and the education system doesn't teach us this stuff. An MBA and Master of Science degree where I studied the global economy, I didn't learn any of this through those institutions. What I learned was words matter and questions matter, right? Out of those institutions, which led me to my own self-education over the past 2 years, coming to grips with what I'm 25 to 30 years late knowing, and then figuring out how to best position myself and my family in this world so that we can thrive in it as opposed to just survive. Now, with respect to the subtitle, how to overcome the lies, right? Yeah. It's very pointed because nobody wants to admit they had been lied to and that they actually believed the lies. So it's a kind of a 2x4 to the forehead in order to get people's attention first. Yes. I used the phrase military family in there. Yeah. Specifically because that's how we all perceive ourselves. The fact of the matter is, though, when you look at the definition of the word military, the human component is only part of the equation, right? Because the military has hardware that it uses to kill people and break things. That's what a military is. Okay. So in my program, if somebody decides they want my guidance and advice and whatnot in my program, we don't use the phrase military family. And I say that in the context of because the military doesn't transition, people do. You see, so we use the phrase armed forces family instead of military family because of the fact that the words we use matter. The ingrained nature of military family in our subconscious is dangerous for us, especially when it pertains to the transition phase, because you got to let it go. And then again, ending that subtitle with to get our freedom back. We lost our freedom when we come into military service. It's the nature of the organization. And I just did it myself, right? Military service. We don't serve the military. We serve the nation. You see, so all these things are extremely important. I argue not only during transition, but from the earliest days in service, because in the United States, we take an oath to support and defend the Constitution and the ideals upheld in it, right, which extend back to our Declaration of Independence. That's what we take an oath to defend, not the military, right, not the president, not even the citizenry, right, but the Constitution. So these ideals are deep. Enlisted and officers take this oath at initial entry and at every reenlistment or pay grade jump or promotion, right, for the officer side. And I don't believe our men and women in the military have really let the ideas of the Constitution sink in, right? And I state that because I've got a survey, an intake survey form I use, and on the last question is what kind of government are we, right? And a lot say democracy or, something that's not right. And when I get on the call with them, I'll say, hey, do you know the Pledge of Allegiance? And they're like, well, of course. I'm like, well, say it. Right. And right in the middle of that Pledge of Allegiance is Republic, for which it stands. Right. So it's right under our nose. Right. We're a democratic republic, and we need to understand the words in our oath and what the Constitution says. And the words that you read in that Constitution, they don't change, but your understanding of them over time does as you get older, as you realize that the words we use matter, right? And you just start pulling the string, and you realize there's a whole lot of things out in this world that we are not aware of, that we must be aware of. So anyhow, that's where the title kind of comes from, or how it came together.
Very interesting. Very interesting. So that topic, that title in itself evolved. It started with the one part, and then you added phrases there to make it relatable to your readers.
Right.
And it really is the fruit of the epiphany, the realization that you had, that although you serve in the military or in the armed forces, as you like to call the families, the armed forces families, which includes everyone from each division, there is a point where they have to realize there is going to be life after the military, and that is what they are not prepared for, in essence.
Exactly. That's it. That's exactly right.
Amazing.
I was the same way, right? Yeah. And I'm still questioning whether or not I'm ready for it. And my life after the military begins in less than 2 months. So we are not ready for it at all.
Wonderful that you are reaching out, that you are searching for answers to enable people to adapt. And I think you're doing a very good job of bringing awareness. And I know that you are going to help people raise their standards in their lives, in this transformation period, as you call it. So there is going to be great fruit in this labor of yours, Jarrod.
I sure hope so.
I believe so. I realized from our initial meeting, we discussed the following. You highlight 3 pillars, and I love this because I felt that this was so, pivotal to what the book is talking about, and to try and, bring the knowledge of the book and the practical side of what you are translating with regards to transformation together. Right. And those 3 pillars you mentioned were health and wellness. That's number 1.
Yep.
Self-identity, number 2. Right. And wealth, I believe, number 3.
That's correct.
Please tell us more about this.
Yeah. So it's real basic life, life model, right? There's nothing inherently deep about, thinking these things up, but it all results from my personal experience and my journey through, this transformation period, realizing that I hadn't taken care of my health throughout the majority of my military career in order to stay, fully mission capable. So I wouldn't get medically discharged or whatnot. But that was due to a lack of understanding of the medical system, as well as a lack of understanding about the chemistry, in my own body. And all of our bodies are different, and we all need to own that and explore that and make ourselves, right, fully mission capable for life, from our sleep health to our mental health, which leads to our physical health. And in the military branches, we're so focused on the physical health, right? Completing the physical fitness assessment, or, knocking out a bunch of pull-ups and push-ups and whatnot. And we were leaving unaddressed the emotional and mental health aspects of the discussion that are super, super important. So additionally, with regards to the health side and the medical records management and getting the medical attention we need when we need it, there's also an aspect in the United States anyways, where we all go through a Veterans Affairs disability rating process at the end of our service time. It's necessary to have medical records in place throughout the service years, so that you're ready for that Veterans Affairs process, as opposed to reacting to it at the end. because it's dang near impossible to go back and try to get your records straight, after years, if not decades, of service time and touch points with medical doctors. It's not smart, right? You're just smarter to manage this as you go, and we are not equipped with the knowledge to manage it accurately from the earliest days in service, and our leaders are not advising us or helping us learn that this is an important aspect, because they don't know, right? Because they're not doing it either. And let's see, one other thing on that with respect to this kind of touches on the wealth aspect, and there's cross connections between these three pillars, as I call them. But having your life insurance picture correct early on and at different touch points as a family grows, right, through the military life cycle. It's an important aspect, because as you rack up elements in service, that can reduce or eliminate your ability to get life insurance out on the open marketplace. So again, all these things are related and interconnected together. But if you don't have a guide that's asking that family specific questions about what their goals are, what their concerns are, and how to best advise them at their stage in their journey through the military, they're going to be guessing. And then they're going to get to the end, right, whenever the government is either done with them or they decide they're done with the government, and realize that there were different decisions they should have made 15 years, 10 years, 5 years ago. But they simply didn't know, and they were so engulfed and concerned with the little mission of the military's goals and objectives that they supplanted those to their own family's detriment. So that's the health and wellness side, right, in a broad stroke. So with respect to self and identity, you see, even I had my identity tied up in my rank, weapons platforms, and service branch, because that's what the institution does, right? That's what it needs us to do. It's to supplant our own identity. That's why it's the uniformed services, right? We all know we're just numbers in a machine, easily replaceable at any moment. That machine is not going to prompt the service member or their spouse to get us out of that mindset. Even after we're gone, right? It doesn't do that. I mean, the machine spent months, if not years, conditioning a service member to be all in on the military mission of killing people and breaking things. Because no matter where you're at in the organization, that's the end result. That's what the military is built to do. Okay. And I believe it would be much, much better if we got a little bit of ourself and our identity back much sooner after the makeover that's given to us in basic indoctrination training, because we'll remember what we're serving for, right? And in the United States, that's liberty and freedom, right? And I believe we are all owed ourselves that once we leave again. But if we're not ready to embrace freedom and liberty, mentally or emotionally, at the end of that service life, it won't be handed back to us on a silver platter. And I know a lot of service members and spouses don't get it back, unfortunately. And it's a sad thing to see too, but they don't. They remain dependent, which leads us into the wealth aspect of this thing. They remain dependent on government checks and or handouts. And I don't believe there's any liberty in that. So with respect to the wealth side, is I don't take a traditional approach to wealth matters, right? Which is a lot of the times, amount of so-called money you have in the stock markets or retirement savings accounts and the valuation of your house, right? That's not wealth to me. Wealth at its most basic definition is access to goods and services. Right? Do you have access to goods and services? Not only that, if you've got access to goods and services, do you have the time to go spend on those goods and services, right? So we take an approach to wealth at its most basic matter is time. Do you have the time freedom to spend your time how you want to, right? On the goods and services that you want to consume and on the goods and services that you want to produce, right?
Yes.
So then have you got that time freedom to employ your individual imagination, knowledge, and experience in some sort of value to the world, right? So that's wealth in my mind: time, imagination, knowledge, and experience, right?
Yeah.
In order to spend those things on the goods and services that you enjoy spending leisurely time on, and on producing those goods and services that you enjoy spending your work time on. And that rounds out a full, holistic life, right?
Yes.
With liberty and freedom. And then we get into the more traditional aspects of wealth, such as financial statements, right? Balance sheet, statement of cash flows, income statement, tax liability, all the more traditional things, retirement savings, if you want to see that, like all the assets and liabilities, right? That's all the more traditional aspects of wealth that Wall Street shoves down our throat to try to get us to send our money to them. So anyways, that's kind of a holistic overview of the health and wellness, self and identity, wealth aspect. And then I always say that all three of those things sit on a sturdy foundation of relationships. Because in all these things, we're dealing with people, and all those areas impact the relationships we have with others, which is where life is truly found on this pale blue dot floating around the cosmos.
Yeah, I love that. And I was thinking while you were discussing the three pillars, which I really find I know that they are basic things that we look at, but the way that you delineate them in the transformation process is very interesting to me. The view that you have, I think it's also teaching me a few things, also to look at it in a different light. And I see that the three pillars in this transformational process of yours, to my mind, gives people in the or soldiers in the military family or individuals in the military family the tools to prepare a life after military service that they can look forward to.
Yes.
That they can look forward to and be happy and say, when I'm done here, when I've served my country, that is what I'm going to do. And I think that brings, just a new dimension to their lives.
I think so. I mean, it's what are we serving for?
Yeah.
Ultimately, what are we serving for? Right.
Yeah.
It's a deep question. It causes people pause,
Yeah. Love that. Audience, think of that question and write down what is the answer to that question for you, because we are all unique individuals. So this is food for thought. And it leads me to our next question, Jarrod. We discussed in our initial virtual meeting that veterans often find it difficult to function successfully in society after having returned from active service. And I remember that I mentioned, to my mind, they are used to doing things a certain way and act a certain way. And adapting to society, normal general society, is for them, in my image that I got that day, as being someone that is used to being in the driver's seat, putting that person in the passenger seat. So what measures can be used to assist them in coping and adapting successfully with societal structures in general?
See, I love that analogy that you're using with respect to being in a passenger seat. But I would like to refine it just a little bit, because I don't believe we are in a passenger seat in the military, right? We're actually in the back of the bus, right? Told to sit down, shut up, and color, right? And then when the government's done with us, or we decide we're done with the government, whoever's driving that bus and the passenger that's sitting in it, they just jump out. And we're told to sit down, shut up, and color. And that bus is just headed wherever it's headed, right? And typically it turns into into a train wreck, frankly, at transition, because we're set aside, we're dropped, right? And it's like, figure it out. Good luck. Thank you for your service, right? That's also a common phrase that you hear around the globe. You've got to be ready to stand up, sprint to the front of the bus, grab the steering wheel, and drive.
I like that.
That's one option. Now, this is a great analogy because my service program, the solution that I'm bringing to the market, I use the analogy of driving down the transition muddy dirt road alone and afraid, right? Or maybe it's that service member and or spouse are actually sitting in the back of the bus that has been sent down a muddy dirt road alone and afraid without a driver, right? Or you can onboard to what I refer to as my transition superhighway, right?
Yeah.
And jump in a passenger seat with me, taking you over that transition landscape, right? Or if you want to step up one more level, let's turn that superhighway into a runway for your fighter jet, so you can fly over the transition battlefield, right? And not be at danger of getting sniped or hitting a landmine and ambushing your own transition. So I like this analogy of of having a wingman and somebody that's watching out for you, watching your six, right? Or helping you avoid the ambushes that exist when the inevitable transition happens. So it's super important. And I equate it back to any military branch or warfare area. What other mission did you go on alone? None. There's no other mission in the military that we ever worked up for, planned for, or deployed on alone. We did it with teams, with experts, with people we trusted to help us. But for some reason, the mindset in the military culture is transition is for later. And when you transition, you quit. And when you're transitioning, it's something to figure out on your own, or to try to piece together a bunch of free advice from, so-called experts who've got one very narrow, limited view of the world, who very rarely ask any questions, but just give advice and give free advice. And I've found in my own experience that the free advice I was given over the last 15 years has been the most costly. It's cost me the most in time and in money and in living my life. So beware of the free, because it may not deliver the results that you hoped it would deliver. And you can never, ever get the time back that you spent after taking that free advice and running with it.
It's very interesting to me that I use that analogy, and that is what you use in your book as well. And I have not read your book, but I certainly am going to do so, because I love learning more about this. So it brings us to the next question. How important is it to be versed in financial matters for those who go into that transition period?
Having an understanding of wealth and then finance, not only for transition, but from childhood. These ideas are easy enough to understand at the 3rd or 4th grade level. I call it financial literacy and money aptitude, right? And going back to the words we use, right? And the questions formed with said words. Super important. Super important. I don't want to get too technical here, but with a pretty significant science background, having worked with nuclear engineers and naval aviators over the years, I love the sciences. And in my last Master's of Science program, I got to study the energy industry a little bit, right? Oil and gas, nuclear power, renewables, power transmission, distribution grids, all that stuff. But I say all that because whenever we're talking financial literacy, it comes down to a basic discussion about energy, right? We trade our time for paychecks, which means we're trading our energy that we're spending in jobs for a paycheck, right? Pretty basic.
Yeah.
We work and we get compensated for time and energy working with paychecks. So it's not a stretch to say, okay, well, that paycheck I get or those digits that show up in my bank account are representative of the energy I spent and the time I spent producing some product for somebody else.
Yeah.
Right. So these digits are representative of our time and energy. And it's fascinating to me that that the populations have been conditioned to turn that time and energy over to the likes of Wall Street and other financial institutions run by people who we don't know, therefore cannot like, and have no reason to trust. That time and energy we have stored away will be there for us in 20, 30, 40 years. Blows my mind. I was in that camp too until the fall of 2020, right? When I changed because I got scared because the lies I had believed for the past 25 years, I realized were just that. And in my book, I use the term lies in my subtitle, but in the book, I define lies as an acronym. That's from Sam Quick actually identified this, but lies is an acronym for limited ideas entertained. And it's exactly what it is. So with respect to financial literacy and money aptitude, we have been conditioned to believe a whole lot of lies around the topic of money. Right. The status quo is go to school, get a job, save for retirement, mortgage a house, have 2 cars, right? And get ready for your walks along the beaches 30, 40, 50 years from now.
Yeah.
It's simply not true. It's simply not true.
Yeah.
Not if you don't understand the money system, if you're not financially literate and understand the words around finance and have some money aptitude to know the difference between what money is historically and what currency is historically. And the fact of the matter is we trade our time and energy for currency that's being created out of thin air. Which bringing my science background back to the forefront, right? That means our time and energy is being stolen from us. So if you're not financially literate and if you have no money aptitude, and you will know whether you are or not based on what I'm about to say. If you don't know the difference between stocks and bonds, if you don't understand what interest rates are, if you don't know what the cost of credit is, if you don't understand the relationship between stock equities, bond equities, and interest rates, if you don't understand the difference between bills, notes, and bonds, if you don't understand any of that, I'll be the bearer of bad news. You're financially illiterate and you will never be free. And that's the plain truth of the matter. So you can continue to believe the lies, or you can turn to and rewind this tape, grab all of those terms I just said and begin to self-educate yourself, because nobody else is going to educate you on it.
I agree. This is detrimental for the transformation, because if we don't have that financial literacy, when they go into society, they are faced with every single financial aspect that you mentioned, and they will not know how to handle it. It will be on overload. And people, when there's an overload, then they stop, they freeze. That's right. And often that is, what hampers their growth. So audience, go back to the phrases and the terms that Jarrod used. Make sure to tick them off. Do you have knowledge about all the aspects that he mentioned?
Yeah,
And this brings me, yeah,
and not only that, Jay, but the fact of the matter is, if people are not willing or able to learn about it in advance, then the financial services professionals are going to make sure you pay one way or another.
Oh,
You're either going to pay them to get you up to speed on their time, or you're going to pay them through loss of your wealth through their services. But so either way, you're going to pay.
Win. Yeah. Either way, you're going to pay and they're going to win.
They're going to win. That's exactly right.
Yeah. So prepare yourself. Let us all prepare ourselves. And it brings me to the next question. What strategy would you propose to facilitate this financial efficiency? What is the starting point? How can we help them out of those places of illiteracy, financial illiteracy? What's the first step?
Realize what currency is for what it is. It's a tool and nothing else. Use it to go faster. Don't hang on to it like it's scarce, because it's not. There's trillions and trillions of dollars floating around in this economy, and most of it is going to the wealthy. Unfortunately, you need to pay to go faster. Get structured content with people who you trust to ask you the questions need to be asked to guide you in your education journey. I went down this road alone, trying to figure it out based on what I knew at the time. Had I had a guide that could have helped orient me into the different resources I needed to get smart earlier on, it would have helped me come to grips with it all much faster, right? But it comes back down to the words and definitions. Anytime you begin to study a new area of life, you've got to focus on the words. Focus on the words. Start with the words I threw out a few minutes ago, right? Understand the meanings of these words. Additionally, I am a staunch believer of the Austrian view of economics in the world, as opposed to the Keynesian view that's been pushed through the academic circles all these years. I believe Keynesian economics is a broken, flawed ideology that does not pertain to the real world. Go look up the definition of academic, right? And you will know exactly what I mean. Look at what our Federal Reserve Chair and Treasury Secretary are saying today and have said over the past months and years with respect to current economic environment. They have no idea. They don't know what they're talking about, because they're using academic models trying to apply it to real world economic matters, and it simply doesn't fit. Right. So I strongly encourage people to consider the Austrian view of economics, and then to carefully consider and learn the terminology and the words that are used in these discussions around financial literacy and money aptitude, so that you can be equipped to make decisions best for you in this very dynamic world. So that's where I would encourage people to start, and to find a guide to help you navigate it all that you trust.
Yeah, I agree. And to me, academic models they are wonderful, and they have their place, but they are often an ideology. Yep. They often don't fit into the practical application of what the result is and the process is going to be.
That's right.
And that's what I loved what you said. You said, go and look what works for you.
Right.
Because each household is structured differently. Each individual, has their own path. So academic frameworks, fantastic. But to me, sometimes they're idealistic, and they don't really help us to see what is the practical process and application of what they are proposing. And we want to empower, and you want to empower people to see that, because they shouldn't be afraid in the process. They should, if they go out and they have that courage to get that financial literacy, from illiteracy to literacy, they will enjoy the process, and the result will be amazing.
Absolutely, they'll enjoy the process. Yeah, and they will have ownership of what's happening to them, right? Because there are no certainties. There's only probabilities.
Yes.
And understanding your individual risk tolerance, or that of you and your spouse as applicable, and understanding that life is simply full of risks. So having as much knowledge as you can, combined with experience behind you to make the best decision for you at the time, is extremely important. But you simply can't do it if you don't have the vocabulary or the knowledge in order to make an informed decision. And therefore, you put that off to strangers who don't have your best interest in mind. And that's the sad fact of the matter.
Yeah. You have to have that background, that foundation. I agree with you completely. I remember from our session, there was an acronym, DOD, that you mentioned.
Okay.
Would you like to explain that to the audience? I found that very enlightening.
So in the United States, we've got the Department of Defense that houses all of our military branches. Right. But I jokingly say it's actually the Department of Dependence, because the people side of this thing are conditioned to be dependent in a scarcity mindset that inhibits us from embracing liberty and finding true freedom in service or beyond it. And until you decide you want to rid yourself of that mindset of dependency, of expecting handouts, expecting free services, expecting discounts on products, liberty will escape you. Because again, our money system is based on credit and debt and fiat currency, and that there isn't enough of it for us. So therefore we need discounts, right? And it all comes back to this idea about energy, right? It's simply a store of energy and how you perceive your work and the pay you get for that work. So don't be dependent, right? In the United States, it's about being independent. And that's what I advocate for.
I love that. Yes, don't get into, or stay rather, in that frame of mind of dependence. Move yourself out of that and even pursue entrepreneurial ventures. But then again, we get back to the place where if you don't have that financial literacy, you are not going to be able to pursue your dream. So it all comes back to enabling yourself, taking that courage to say, well, I've been following this model. It has kind of conditioned me, like you said, to a certain way of thinking and living. I'm not going to be in the military, when my time is up. Now I need to learn a new purpose. I need to learn a new way of doing things. And that's why I find your book so wonderful, because that process is explained. And the process is, like you said, they will enjoy the process if they understand why they are doing what they are doing. So thank you very much for that.
Yeah, and Jay, it goes a step further too, right? Because the vast majority of service members and their spouses, as applicable, are going to leave service and go get a job, right? And they believe that job is secure, right? And I joke that the job is an acronym as well, just one boss away from no paycheck, right? Yeah. So whenever you plug into another job with a single employer, well, again, it's a very dynamic world, right? So do you really want to put all your eggs in one basket and depend on that employer to give you a job and a paycheck week after week? Or do you want to diversify your risk and start, side gigs so that you've got additional streams of income coming in? In the case that employer, has to get rid of you, or you decide you don't like working there and want to quit, right? So again, it's about finding that liberty. Right. And you can only do it through financial literacy, with multiple streams of income. Super important.
Super important. And if COVID showed us one thing, is that we have to be prepared for anything. And I would like to say, I think that people that had various streams of income were not as financially affected as people that had one stream of income. So let that be a lesson to us all.
Yeah, I would agree with that too. Most definitely.
Yeah. Thank you so much for explaining the acronym to us. We appreciate that. You have explained the one for lies. Would you just like to reiterate that for the audience? What is the acronym for lies? I found that very, very interesting.
Yeah, again, this is to Sam Quick, who came up with this, but limited ideas entertained. And that's exactly what many of us have been living in throughout the majority of our lives. So yeah, don't believe the lies, the limited ideas entertained. So the more you entertain those lies, the more entrapped you are and stay.
Absolutely. I love that. Thank you so much for making that clear to us. I appreciate it. Now, I know you have a fabulous info letter and you have so many followers. Tell the audience how many subscribers you have and how we can sign up, because this is the start of moving into that place where we learn more and, we equip ourselves for a better future.
Sure. Thanks, Jay. Yeah, so I started a newsletter that I called Knowledge Bombs a year or so ago. But then with the release of Top Gun Maverick a couple of months ago, I actually changed it to Miracle Bombs. So my Miracle Bombs newsletter on LinkedIn is at 1,197 subscribers. I also publish it on Substack as well, but I don't have as many subscribers there. Yeah. But basically, I run through, my pillar ideas of health and wellness, self and identity, wealth, and then relationships throughout the year at a quarter, 3 months at a time in each of those topics. And then I will scatter throughout all of them, current economic or finance type topics, not in too much detail, but enough to get people thinking about, challenging the lies they believe with respect to their own personal finances, because it all relates and interconnects together. But yeah, we've got, just shy of 1,200 subscribers on LinkedIn now, and then trying to grow that Substack newsletter base too, so that if LinkedIn decides they don't like what I'm saying and it goes away, well, you've got a backup place to go get the information. But yeah.
I love that. And how do we sign up? Do we reach out to you on LinkedIn? Do you send out a link? Is there a website that we can visit?
Yeah, so on Substack, jarrodhsmith.com, or just search Miracle Bombs in Google. It'll come up on LinkedIn and or Substack.
Wow.
So yeah, very, very easy to find. The algorithms are being nice to me so far. So yeah, a quick internet search, it'll come up, and then you navigate to the LinkedIn newsletter site to subscribe, or you go to the Substack site and subscribe there.
I love that. Wonderful. It's easy to access. That's very important. 1,197 subscribers. I want to be 1,198. That's my number. So you're going to see my name pop up there. Great.
Yeah. So I also tape audio of it too. And that way people can listen to it on the go as opposed to have to read it. So that's a little bit different than a lot of newsletters, which are just print. But I tape mine as well for listening on the go. And typically they'll range from 6 minutes to 15 minutes in length at the max. Yeah. So you can listen to my slow Texas Southern drawl instead of reading my writing.
Wonderful. So you have that option. That's amazing. I want to ask you, Jarrod, what is next for you? What is your next step? What is your next venture?
My big thing is getting the word out to the armed forces families about the dangers that lie ahead for them, so that they don't fall into the same situation I and many of my peers have fell in toward the end of service time. So my big effort starting October 1st is reaching the junior military officer and their spouse in order to give them the heads up on what they need to be doing for themselves and the knowledge and information they need now to truly take care of their people. So that's the idea.
Wonderful, wonderful. Thank you very much. Yeah, it makes sense that the military personnel that are, going towards the end of their service would be more open to this than the younger ones. But it's so much more important for the younger ones to catch on to these principles now, so that
Yes.
when by the time they get to the end of their service, that they can have a lovely, life that is in place, and that they can also pursue their dreams and heart's desires and be happy. It's important to be happy.
Yeah, super important not to wait. Transition is not for later. Transition is for now. That's my bottom line message. Transition is not for later. Transition is for now. Right. It all comes back to family readiness for getting out of the service unexpectedly, or for that service member not returning home.
Yes,
That's the bottom line.
very important. Not later. Now, today. Make that decision today. Take that courage today. Any words of wisdom?
Now is also an acronym. There is no other way.
Oh, say that again, please. Now? No? What was that acronym? Sorry?
No other way.
No other way. I love that. You are amazing with acronyms. Like, seriously, you have a gift of taking a word and just making something amazing of it, and it all ties in with your novel. Amazing, simply amazing. Thank you, Jarrod.
Yeah, it's
Jarrod,
fine.
thank you. I wanted to ask you, do you have any last words of wisdom for the audience? What is on your heart to share with them today?
Take care of yourself.
Yeah.
So you can take care of your people. That's the biggest thing.
Yeah. That's powerful. Very powerful. Take care of yourself so that you can take care of your people. And those words will stick with me. Personally, to me, thank you so much from my side for the wisdom that you have imparted into my life. And I know the audience enjoyed, sharing and hearing the knowledge that you've gained and seeing that heart of servant leadership, that heart-centered leadership of yours. And we deeply appreciate you taking the time and making the effort to be here. Thank you very much.
No, thank you, Jay. I really enjoyed the conversation. I appreciate you giving me the platform to spread my view of the world, and how we can all make a better impact on it. So thanks a lot.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. And to the audience, we are going to be sharing Jarrod's contact details. Make sure you get a copy of his book, Avoiding Each and Every Military Veteran's Disadvantage: How to Overcome the Lies in Military Family Beliefs to Get Our Freedom Back. Get your copy, make contact with him, network with him, follow him on social media, and we'll see you next time. Goodbye.